Okay, now we're on to our slope note. So remember, slope is just rise over run when we're on the graph. And so I'm going to count my rise starting here is 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going down, so it's -4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I realize I did not line up on my line there, so that means I counted it wrong. And so I could go ahead and count all the way out here, 7, 8, because that hits the line right there. Or I can come back up and count my 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so then my slope would be -3/6, which simplifies to -1/2. Or, if I use the other way to count, because I hit a corner there again, it's -4/8, which still gives me the -1/2. So it doesn't matter where you count from, it just matters that you do end on an actual corner there. On this side, I'm going up 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4, and so my answer is just 1/4. Alright. When we're in these, remember our basic format is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope. And so my answer here is just 3. My answer here is just the -2. That's my slope. Alright, so now we're finding it just through a pair of points. I could graph it and do rise over run, but my basic formula is I subtract my y's and then subtract my x's. And that gives me my slope. That's the same if I graphed them and counted out rise over run. And so my y's, so -12 minus 8, and then my x's is 11 minus 17. That gives me -20 over -7. The negatives cancel out, and so my answer, -6. My answer is 20/6, which simplifies to 10/3. Alright, next I do this one, -20 minus 3, and 14 minus -2. Remember, always keep the minus in the formula and the minus if it's a negative number. So that gives me -23. This changes to a plus. So -23/16. And that does not simplify, so that's my answer. Alright, again, very simple. This is our just y equals mx plus b. Remember, slope is m, y-intercept is b. So I'm just plugging it in. Y equals -2/5 x, so x and y stay there, plus 3. So I plugged in my slope, I plugged in my y-intercept, that's my answer. This is y equals 8/3 x plus 5. Alright, so now we're on to find the slope of a line parallel. So remember, parallel means the same slope. And so we're just looking here, our slope is just going to be the same. So it's a -x, which means the slope is -1. The slope is 1/5, and so parallel means they'll just be the same. Perpendicular is our opposite. Reciprocal. And so that means I'm going to take this slope, so -2/3, and I'm going to flip it over to 3/2. This is negative, so my new slope has to be positive. I take this slope, 3/4, I flip it over to be 4/3. That's positive, so I make mine negative. Nice and easy. Okay. Now we have to write an equation from a point in the slope. So my equation is still y equals mx plus b. This time they gave me xy. They gave me m. I need to find b. Okay, and so I'm going to plug in what they gave me. So y is -4 equals my 7/5 times my x, which is -2, plus b. And then I solve it. So I go ahead and multiply. So now -4 equals -14/5 plus b. Then I add my 14/5. Right. Because this is not a lesson in fractions, we're just going to type it into these graphing calculators that do fractions for us. So I type in my -4 plus, and then control divide gives me that fraction box. So 14/5. And it tells me -6/5. Okay? So b equals -6/5. So then my equation is y equals 7/5 x minus 6/5. So the equation, you go ahead and plug in the slope and the b that you found. Alright, our next one, our slope is -2 x, so that's my x, y, and m. And so that gives me 5 equals -2 times -5 plus b. So 5 equals 10 plus b minus 10 gives me -5 equals b. And then my answer is just y equals -2x minus 5. Nice and simple. Solve it out, plug it back in. Okay, this is the same thing, but we just have 2 steps. So step 1 is find slope. Is the slope formula. And then step 2 is find the equation. So I start by labeling x1, y1, x2, y2, and my first step is to find the slope. So 4 minus 0 over -3 minus 2 gives me -4/5. Now I plug in, I can use either point. I'm going to choose this one and do my y equals mx plus b. So 0 equals -4/5 that I just found. That was my slope. And then my x is the 2 plus b. So that multiplies out to 0 equals -8/5 plus b. I add 8/5 to both sides to get positive 8/5. That cancels out there. So b equals 8/5. And so my equation is just y equals -4/5 x plus 8/5. I do the same thing here, x1, y1, x2, y2. So my y's are just 1 minus 1. My x is 2 minus -4. That gives me 0/6, so my slope is just 0. And so then I plug in either point. Again, I'm just going to pick my first one. So 1 equals 0 times -4 plus b. That just multiplies out to 0, and so b equals 1. And so I can write out my equation as y equals 0x plus 1. But this is not necessary, and so we're going to simplify that to just y equals 1. So when we have a slope of 0, it's just going to be a simple y equals a number equation. Alright, and the last step is almost the same. It's just now we're adding in our parallel, which is same slope, and our perpendicular, which is the opposite reciprocal. And so my slope is that same 3/2. My b I have to solve for. So there's my x and y. So -4 equals 3/2 times -2 plus b. The 2's cancel each other out now. I have -4 equals negative, still have the negative sign, 3 plus b. Add 3 to both sides to get -1 equals b. So b equals -1. Therefore, my equation is y equals 3/2x minus 1. Alright, this says parallel again, which means my slope is the -3. b I'm going to solve for. So 5 equals -3 times -1 plus b, which means 5 equals +3 plus b. And so 2 equals b. Therefore, my equation is y equals -3x plus 2. Okay, so perpendicular to y equals -4, that means this slope is 0. So perpendicular to 0 is undefined. Okay. Undefined slopes just mean it is an x equals equation. So this is an easy one. I just say x equals and take my x value, -5. So perpendicular or undefined ones are really easy. We just take the value of that point. Here, this slope is 1/2. So my perpendicular slope is -2/1, which we simplify to just -2. Okay, and then I plug in with x and y. So -3 equals -2 times 3 plus b. -3 equals -6 plus b. Add 6 to both sides to get +3 equals b. And so then I combine them to get y equals -2x plus 3. And that is my answer.